In this video, I'll be showing how to make this DIY bird canvas art. Previously, I sprayed the canvas with these Distress Spray Stains by Tim Holtz in the colors Cracked Pistachio, Mermaid Lagoon, and Twisted Citron. Then I let that dry overnight. I'm now starting with Gelatos by Faber Castell in these two colors, Kiwi and Aqua Dolce, just to brighten up the canvas. Then I'm going to blend it out with a sponge. Now I'm brushing the edges with Distress Ink by Tim Holtz, first with Evergreen Bough, then with Mowed Lawn.
I think you should. I make a real good.
I'm adding a metallic paste in gold by Art C around the edges as well with the brush. I found that this is a lot quicker method than just using a sponge instead. I've gone in again with my ink sprays, starting with Cracked Pistachio, then Mermaid Lagoon. I'm going over the sides with my ink stamps in the colors Salty Ocean and Mowed Lawn. I'm now spraying Twisted Citron to add to the canvas.
So aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should, I'll be glad to meet me. If I were you, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I make a real good song out of you.
And some more Mermaid Lagoon blended with an Aqua Dolce.
I think you should. I mean, I really think you should, yeah. Aren't you glad to meet me?
I've added more of the sprays, gelatos, and stamps. Then I'm blending it out for a lighter shade.
I mean, I really think you should, yeah. Aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should, I'll be glad to meet me. If I were you, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I make a real good song out of you, time and ticking slow. Yes, you're overdue, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I mean, I really think you should, yeah. Aren't you glad to meet me?
So now I'm just touching up the golden edges by using Mowed Lawn. Then I set that down to dry for this next part because we don't want any wet paint transferring off the canvas. So now I'm taking out my tracing paper pad to start tracing out a bird image by placing down the image face up under the tracing paper to copy off of it. So I wanted this image mirrored on my canvas, but I forgot to mirror it on my computer before printing. So I definitely recommend doing so to prevent flipping over your image face down, then placing it under the tracing paper to mirror it by hand. So although this method works fine, I found that it becomes much harder to see the lines to copy off of.
I'm ticking slow, yes, you're overdue, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I mean, I really think you should, yeah. Aren't you glad to meet me?
After finishing, tape it down to the canvas to prevent it moving during the transferring process. So you want to take an old card, like a credit card or like one of those hotel key cards, and I just started moving it back and forth as well as pushing down with the card. So do this until your design is fully transferred. I also used a pencil to darken some of the lines. Here I'm using Liquitex Basics paint in light blue, bright aqua green, cerulean blue hue, titanium white, and touches of gold and silver to create color in my bird. So I'm beginning by just randomly adding color where I think it's needed with a small defined brush, using all my colors doing so.
Aren't you glad to meet me? You should, I'd be glad to meet me. If I were you, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should.
For the leaves, I'm first painting in the outside lines as a guideline, then coming in to fill in the inside.
Aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I mean, I really think you should, yeah. Aren't you glad to meet me? You should, I'd be glad to meet me. If I were you, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I make a real good song out of you, time me ticking slow. Yes, you're overdue, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I mean, I really think you should, yeah. Aren't you glad to meet me? Aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should, I'd be glad to meet me. If I were you, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I make a real good song out of you, time me ticking slow. Yes, you're overdue, aren't you glad to meet me? I think you should. I mean, I really think you should, yeah.
And now, finally, sprinkling blue and gold glitter as the finishing touch. Everything used in this video is in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.
I mean, I really think you should, yeah.